Okay, it's 6 p.m. Let's bring the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Overton. Here. Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Purdock.
Here.
Vice Mayor Slutin.
Here.
Mayor Kramer.
Here. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Harris, could you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you all stand, please, for the invocation? Mr. Carson?
Tonight, Lord, we give thanks, knowing we are blessed to live in a nation, a state, and a community where we are able to come together to meet, and where an individual's voice on matters is not only allowed, but encouraged. And encouraged we are, Father God, by Paul's words in his letter to the Colossians, where he says, "For this we reason also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you and to ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will and all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you may walk and be filled with the knowledge of his will and all spiritual understanding, that you may walk worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all might according to his glorious power for all patience and long-suffering with joy, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified us to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in the light." And Lord God, by way of your love and grace through faith, we ask that you endow this council leadership with the courage, strength, and wisdom required to guide our community into a bright, secure, and fruitful future. In the precious name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
I'd like to observe a moment of silence. This is kind of off the top, but yesterday, as you all know, was 18 years ago. A horrific event happened in New York City, so I'd like to just observe a moment for that. Amen. Thank you. Mr. Flora, has any changes in the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
Make a motion to accept the agenda as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. Okay, our first order of business is a presentation of a proclamation declaring September as Senior Center Month. I think we have a few folks that are on the board of our Highland Senior Center and its manager. If you'll all step down, I'd appreciate it. Down and up. Thank you, Joyce. Okay, this being Senior Center Month, September 2019, whereas older Americans are significant members of our society, investing their wisdom and experience to help enrich and better the lives of younger Americans, and whereas the Highland Senior Center Service Center has acted as a catalyst for mobilizing the creativity, energy, vitality, and commitment of the older residents of Clearlake and Lake County, and whereas through a wide array of services, programs, and activities, the Highland Senior Service Center empowers older adults to contribute to their own health and well-being and the well-being of their fellow citizens of all ages. And whereas the Highland Senior Service Center affirms the dignity, self-worth, and independence of older persons by facilitating their decisions and actions tapping their experiences, skills, and knowledge, and enabling their continued contributions to the community. And now therefore be it proclaimed that the Clearlake City Council does hereby call upon all citizens to recognize the special contributions of the Highland Senior Service Center participants and the special efforts of the staff and volunteers who work every day to enhance the well-being of the older adults of our community, dated this 12th day of September 2019, and signed by myself as mayor.
I just want to thank the City Council for doing this for us. I really appreciate acknowledging what the center does for our community, and we just really enjoy serving those in our community that are the older age, and we're just happy to be able to serve. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that in mind, we do want to invite everyone this Saturday doors open at 5 for our annual Hoedown fundraising event. So tickets are $35. We have live music, prime rib, chicken. It's lots of raffle items, and it's just going to be a really fun time. You don't want to miss it, and it's a great fundraiser for the center. So, in fact, it's our main fundraiser of the year for the center. So we hope to see everybody there.
Saturday night, right?
Yep.
Saturday night.
Yes. Yeah, let's say on the tickets, it says Friday. Sorry about that. I said it was really bad that none of us but our mayor noticed it last night. And I was like, we've been doing this all for a month, and we just did not notice it. So, yes, it's Saturday night at 5 o'clock. We open up the doors, and our own Phil Harris is going to be one of our auctioneers, so we can come down and watch him. He's great for us. He really supports us, and we appreciate that. And yes, and our supervisor is going to be our MC. And so, and we do appreciate that you guys have taken the time to come down and support our center. So,
I'm going to be there tomorrow too, just because. No, I'm just kidding.
well, come on down. We will be down there still. I'm sure I'll still be there at 5 o'clock.
It's better than one.
Yeah, hey. Okay, thank you.
And if any of you need tickets, I do happen to have 6 of them that I still need to sell, or I'm going to be in trouble with Joyce. So, at any rate, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is on Clear Lake's retail market and opportunities for expansion. Mr. Flora?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. So, a little while back, the city contracted with a group to do some analysis of our retail market, the demographics we have here, and, sorry, I thought I had this set up. And I wanted to share that information with the council. So we have several slides here. Some of them I'll go quickly. I chose not to have the consultant come and present this because I felt like should be able to cover it for you. But so this is just kind of some background on all the different resources that they use to draw the data that we'll be looking at tonight. So the information that we have is a demographic overview. They use some cell phone tracking data to help create a trade area that is customized for our community, develop or I guess identify what they call lifestyle segments within our community, and then come up with a retail gap analysis, what different services aren't provided in our community, and those of us as consumers have to go outside of our trade area to fulfill that. And then look at some peer cities and identify a number of retailers that are good fit in other areas but there may be gaps here. So depending on what type of retailer you look at, they look at different study areas. Can be anywhere from 3 miles, 5 miles, or 10-mile drive time, or radius. So the information that we have kind of breaks it down in all of these different segments to have the information readily accessible to those folks who may be interested in our community. So, you know, I think the council's aware. I mean, Clearlake is a pretty poor community, so some of our numbers at first glance don't look great. You know, our average household income, it's about $25,000 within the city. But the reality is we have 25% of the retail jobs, or actually closer to 50% of the retail jobs within Lake County are here in the city of Clearlake, and so we draw from a larger trade area into the city. And so, for example, if you look at the 10-mile radius there, we have almost 35,000 population. You scroll down to the median household income, getting close to 40,000 there. So as we spread that out, average home value, 460,000, makes a big difference. When you look at Clearlake's home value, right now is probably around 180, 190,000. And so these numbers make things look a lot more attractive to retailers than just using readily available data just for the city. Daytime population, you see about 29,000 within that 10-mile radius, and so you know, that's a better number than just looking at our population of 15 to 16,000. This is just a little chart that kind of shows the trade area that was identified for Clearlake, and so they helped educate this trade area by tracking consumer cell phone data, people that have been to Walmart between August 1st of 2018 and August 1st, 2019, and then tracking kind of where they're from. And you know, we won't get into this chart too much, but like the red dots is showing a higher propensity of people in that area. But you can see that, you know, all of Lakeport, and then all the North Shore communities, Kelseyville, even Middletown and Hidden Valley are all considered part of Clearlake's trade area. So within that customized trade area, most of the county population, you know, the county has about 66,000 people in it. That's what we're looking at. They did a number of projections for growth rate. Close to 10% is what they're projecting over the next 10 years, which is good for us. I did want to point out that earlier information they sent us was incorrect, and they had to adjust it. And I just noticed today that this projected 2024 population of 59,000 is not accurate. It'd be closer to 68,000 would be the population within our trade area within 10 years. It's just a breakdown of the demographic race here. I don't think this is anything that's surprising. This chart here shows the number of households within the area, 33,000, and then you can kind of get a breakdown on the left. 30% of that are one-person households at 7,500 households, and then so you can kind of see that the bulk of the folks are either one or two-person households within our trade area, almost 67%. Housing value, we've widened this even from the 10 miles that I was talking about earlier, 503,000. So, you know, that's pretty attractive in looking at that housing unit value. This is just a breakdown of owner-occupied and renter-occupied. I won't get into that now. Breakdown of people per household. This is all stuff that different retailers are looking for. Daytime population within the trade area, 53,000. Which is a pretty good number. Average employee salary, almost 48,000. You can see, you know, no surprise here either, but almost 65% blue-collar jobs and about a third white-collar jobs. And then educational attainment statistics. We can provide all of this. I've already provided this information to a number of folks who are trying to attract development here, but this is just information that's available for anyone who's trying to educate a decision about locating a business here. So I'm going to skip ahead here. This is the tapestry segmentation. So this is, it's impossible to read, but what is here are, I think there's 67 different segments of the United States population. And so each of us in this room and across the United States are identified in one of these segments. And so it's educated based on what our income is, what type of house we have, what kind of websites we go to, what kind of things we like to buy, what our recreational activities are. And so this is all segmented in a way because then we can look at our population, and there are certain retailers that focus on different segments of the population because I like to, do things outdoors, and so, I'm going to buy more things at Big Five, that type of thing. And so they did analysis of our population, and you can see over here we have the top 5 categories. 31% are in the down the road category, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. About 30% is the category of small town simplicity, hard scrabble road, old and newcomers, and the great outdoors. And so, and this is within a 5-mile radius of Walmart. So down the road, just kind of an overview, there's across the U.S., there's 1.4 million households that are in this category, but it's a mix of low-density, semi-rural neighborhoods. They're younger, diverse communities, family-oriented consumers that value traditions. This market generally has higher unemployment, lower median household income and home value, and more than a fifth of the households are below the poverty level. And so then there's some other information here. Typical housing is often mobile homes or single-family homes with a median value of $90,000. Most have purchased a used vehicle in the past year. I'm just trying to give you a flavor of the level of information that's available now, and that's really necessary to be able to educate folks because, since I've been here, I've done a fair amount of just direct outreach to different retailers that seem to be expanding, and it's very difficult to get Clearlake on their radar. And I think having this information I'm hopeful that it's going to change that conversation a little bit. So we also have a breakdown of small town simplicity, which is the other one that covers, these two cover about 60% of our population. But it's pretty interesting to look through this. For example, these folks, semi-rural lifestyle, complete with trucks and SUVs, domestic ones. They have ATVs and vegetable gardens. They enjoy outdoor activities like hunting and fishing, watching NASCAR, college football and basketball, and so forth. This is a map just showing the sort of intensity of this type of consumer segment. So it's pretty awesome from this perspective, a little creepy when you think about it on a personal level, but that's the way we've opened things up. So as we kind of focus in a little bit, so this map identifies, and this is just based on census tracts, but the important thing here is within the trade area that's identified, our retailers are providing $461 million a year in services to the community. Okay, it's a pretty big number, but the total market demand within that trade area is just over $1 billion. So we have over $600 million, almost $620 million of market leakage. So those of us that live within this area are spending significantly more outside of the trade area and the county, as we're spending here locally. And, you know, this gap is significant because of online sales a lot, but we do believe that there is room to fill that gap a lot here locally. And so this is a breakdown of, you know, where those gaps are. So the top one, even, you know, with Walmart here, general merchandise stores, $68 million of leakage every year. Food service and drinking places, $54 million. Food and beverage stores, $50 million. Clothing and clothing accessories, $46 million. And building material and garden equipment stores, over $22 million of leakage, and so forth. So a lot of room there. Now this is the peer analysis. So we're up there at the top. This is these numbers come from a 10-minute drive time from Safeway. But we have Red Bluff, Anderson, Crescent City, a number of other communities that these folks have identified as being similar to us based on income, market supply, population, so forth. And so the next step, this chart it's difficult to read, but what we have here is the green, like clear over on the left, is automotive stores. So we have 4 automotive stores, and these are only national retailers. This is not mom and pop stores. Do not show up as part of this analysis. We have 4 automotive stores, but within the 10-minute drive time, but all these peer communities, their average is 5 automotive stores. So the argument is we should be able to support at least 1 more automotive store within our trade area to help close the gap. You look over here, quick service restaurants, we have 8. Most communities like us have 13. And so this helps. The idea is to help us attract those folks and show them that there is a gap that they can help us fill. And so then this chart here is showing those peer retailers or those peer communities and what retailers that they have. These are specific retailers. So among those other communities, there's 9 Starbucks. And we need one too, right? Yeah. So 7 Burger Kings, 6 Little Caesars, 4 Denny's, 4 Panda Expresses, and so forth. And so then they also did an analysis on, and this is a little, I had them do some things a little more quickly because I wanted to provide some of this information to the folks who are trying to attract interest in the airport property. So they're going to circle back up with some of this stuff later, but you know, this is just a map that we can use that shows the major national chains with vehicle traffic. And I know this is something that's come up before, but it is important to note that there's a traffic count, vehicles per day of 18,000 on Highway 53 near Walmart, and that's about a little over 20% more trips than you see on Highway 29 in Lakeport.
What was this traffic count?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure the date of the traffic count.
Just by anecdotal, it seems to be a lot busier in the last 2 years.
I think that was 2017.
I can't say for sure. I'll have to find out. So we can go through these quickly. They're a little bit hard for you to see, but this is the Burns Valley Mall. But they went through and identified a number of underutilized sites, like, for example, B&G Tire they don't think is the highest and best use. Right here across from that, there's a little flower shop, but there's about a 2.5 acre property that they feel is located well and could be good development, and then a property right here, and then even some higher and best use here between in some of these tenants in the strip mall between Grocery Outlet and Safeway. And then a vacant lot down here a little bit further down by where the Hope Center will be. And then, of course, the former Burger King property is well suited. There's a gas station going in here right now, but that was identified. And then, interestingly enough, the Caltrans property up at the top of the hill they thought was a great location for retail. And then this is the other zone, but of course we have the airport property that we should be getting the development plans on very soon. We've been talking to for quite a while there by Carl's Jr. The corner property over here, Old Highway 53, that's been listed for some time. And then they're also identifying a possible site here kind of between McDonald's, the property, the roadie property that's sort of been abandoned over there, and we've had problems with this location here at the top as being a good location for additional retail. And you can see it there. So that's kind of the quick overview. You may, have a lot of questions, but I can provide this information. I do have a couple other things I won't go into real quick, but we have a number of retailers that the exact type of stuff that they're looking for, that they think would be a perfect fit here. And so we have all the details on that. And then they also put together a marketing guide that shows all the key stuff. It's a 2-page piece that shows what we have now, our vehicle counts, and then a lot of the high-level demographic information. They are a firm that will do full-service recruitment for us. Go to ISCS and all of the other shows, and throughout the year, this is something that they do have relationships with. I did kind of want to get temperature gauge from the council on whether they think that's something that you would be interested in pursuing. With the work that they've already done, they'd be willing to do it for a year for us for around $25,000. It'd be normally about $45,000 a year to provide that service and update these statistics and information each year. So just kind of interested in getting some feedback on whether you think it's worth us moving in this direction.
Mayor.
I think, would they go to Las Vegas and to Monterey at ICSC for conferences?
Mm-hmm.
And any other ones? There's something that's one in San Diego too.
Yeah, I don't know all of them for sure that would be included, but I know there's actually one next week that I'd like to try to figure out a way to. They aren't representing anyone in Northern California right now. It's the ISCS one in Las Vegas.
That's the nationwide big one. That's the one you need to do. And the other thing is, but I think for 25,000, I think for sure we need to get the traffic counts updated, because that's a indicator that they all look at.
Yeah, I think they're doing a Highway 53 corridor study, and I'm sure they'll be doing that as part of it here soon. I think the group you sent that information to is going to Las Vegas from what,
I believe that they are, yeah. Of course, they would just be focusing on the airport
airport,
site,
yeah.
but yeah.
well,
Any other questions or?
yes, Councilman.
So if we go with them, will they give us a list of the different places that, they plan on presenting us with? Are you going to have
sure,
a list
yeah.
of everything, so?
I just kind of wanted to get a gauge and see if it was something you were interested in at all, and then we'd bring a contract back to the council for approval, but.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, I'm highly supportive of pursuing retailers to fill, especially our empty spaces, for sure. But yeah, whatever we can bring to stimulate economic development and also to provide more services for the citizens that are in the community, that would be huge. So yeah, very, very supportive of the idea.
Seems unanimous.
As am I.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Moving on now to public comment. It's the time any member of the public may address the city council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. I have several speaker information cards which are supposed to be filled out prior to the meeting, but if we won't prevent anybody from talking. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss issues brought forth under public comment. Council cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on the next available agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda item following. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. I assume the clock's working. So, our first one, Mr., let's see, Arisha K. Just state your name again, if you would, please.
Laura Kelleher.
Okay.
I've been a resident here since, good evening. I've been a resident here since January of 2018. And since I came here and before I started working, I've been working with CC4C, and I still work with CC4C, and I really like it a lot. It seems like every corner used to be a dump around here, so it's really fun for me to clean up really old stuff. I think I found a bottle cap one time in Lower Lake that was the first metal beer cap that didn't have the ripple thing. And anyway, you find a lot of stuff out there. But I have some suggestions. May I continue?
Pardon me?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a problem with the curb at the library being 7.5 inches high. And I brought it to Mike Baker's attention, but I haven't heard back from him yet. So I have a measuring tape in the car, and the curb right out in front here is 5.5 inches. And so, I mean, you walk right up to the curb and then go in the library, but something needs to be done about that. Someone's really going to eat it there. You know what I'm saying? So it really needs to be fixed, like, immediately. And I have ideas for simple solutions, like just a sub-curb before the 7.5 inches instead of just leave the 7.5 inches and then, so, okay. There's a lot to say. I have a lot to say, but I'm going to propose 2 official burn days per year here. Being out in the community, and just yesterday, getting my car smogged. I was cleaning up along Old 53, and there's just all kinds of down branches and stuff, wood. And and I also proposed cleaning it up and beautifying Clearlake. It's really beautiful here. Mount Konocti Lake, the lake is gorgeous. I'm from Central Coast, and I just love it here, except for the weather. But there needs to be, if you ask me, more communication to the people on all kinds of issues, especially dumping and trashing, and more fine signs, more citing people that trash the area, more cops out citing these people, and these people could actually start, part of their fine or whatever could be community service, whereas they start cleaning up their own mess. Anyway, so I guess we're kind of getting onto the homeless, and it's really sad about the homeless, what the homeless has caused. The homeless has caused really a tightening of just spaces to sit, and even the workers, like at Safeway and stuff, just to sit around and outside and have a break, and where they can smoke. But I also have to walk by smoking every day, every time I'm at Dollar Tree. So there's a lot to work on around here, but thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Sabache?
Good evening. I had an event on Labor Day weekend that I helped organize with a new resident in the area. He used to live in Santa Rosa. His name is Johnny Garcia, and he used to always put together car shows. And so I worked with him on a small car show over at the youth center a while ago. And we decided to go big and create a 3-day car show event. It was called Slammed on the Lake. It was a lowrider event. We had 64 lowriders show up. In comparison, for the 5th year, Middletown had their car show on the same day. day, and they had 90. So for a first year, I think we did really well to bring 64 cars, where almost 90% of all the cars came from out of county. Some as far as, I saw Nevada license plate from Carson City, and we had a whole group from Bakersfield that came up as well. Some people camped out in the park, some people got hotel rooms, and so I think it was a very positive event. But what I came up here to tell you was thank you to the Parks crew. The Parks crew did a fabulous job of setting up the resort area so that we can have a safe place to be, a clean environment to enjoy, and people were fishing, people were barbecuing, people were having a really good time, and I wanted to make sure to publicly thank our Parks crew because they did an amazing job, and they always do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Spellier. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I think we need to ask if there are any changes to it first. Okay. Now I'll entertain a,
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
sorry, let me back up 1 minute. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on anything in the consent agenda or? Okay, seeing no comments out there now.
Third time a charm.
No.
I move that we approve the consent.
Second?
Been moved by Vice Mayor Slotin and seconded by Councilman Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Moving on then to item 8 in business. Consideration of rejection of bids for the 2019 Double Chip Seal Southwest Avenues project. Is that going to be you, Mr.
Yes,
Flora, or
Mr.
Mr.
Schwartz
Davis?
will introduce the item.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, we conducted a bid of the chip seal paving project, and to our disappointment, we only received 2 bids on that project, one from Northwest Paving, the other one from VSS International. Northwest Paving bid was $148,200. They were the parent low bidder. VSS was second at $213,000. We had previously budgeted $70,000 for this, so this had happened to us, you may remember last year when we were bidding the Burns Valley Drive project at kind of the same time of the year. So I don't know that it's totally unexpected, although we did make some contact prior to coming to council and wanting to take this to bid. And we had talked to an A. Davis Paving out of Reading who didn't even bid the project. And that's kind of how we arrived at our cost estimate is, we talked to one of the guys in the industry that bids the project. So since that time, I've had one of the contractors reach back out to me and provided some suggestions on what they saw that drove the cost up. Things that we didn't realize, just some language and things like that in the specifications. What we considered to be benign, they didn't. So what I'd like to do is reject the bids tonight, and then I'd like to place this back out to bid early next year and try this again, and with the contractor's suggestions.
Councilmember Harris, you have a question?
Would we be mitigating some issues in-house in preparation for the renewed RFP?
Yeah, in terms of our level of effort, very minor, but the way it was perceived, it would be significant. Yes.
Can we know kind of just a vague overview of what their concern was? I'm just curious.
Absolutely. We had requested in the bid that the contractor grade the roads prior to chip sealing. Chip sealing over gravel is not a real common thing that's done in Northern California any longer. Colusa County used to do quite a bit of it a decade or so ago. So the contractors are not set up to come in and grade any roads. The chip sealers are kind of specific in what they do, and that is they show up and they chip seal. And so we didn't perceive that as a big item because we were pretty descriptive fact, the contractor says, yeah, I read your description, and I just thought it was too simple. And so that was the one item. The second item is allow them to do the double chip seal all in one day. It's such a small test strip, small job. The way it's set up right now is they do the chip seal, they do some sweeping, wait a couple of days, and they come back to the second chip seal. They were both confident that this is a very easy job for them to double chip seal it in one day, which cuts their labor cost, travel cost, and everything else in half. We didn't realize that.
Well, I appreciate your efforts. Thank you so much for the answers.
Any other questions? Schwartz? Go ahead.
Did you have a pre-bid?
We did we have a pre-bid conference? No, we did not have a pre-bid conference on this one.
And one question, you mentioned that the one contractor you spoke with that you got the $70,000 pre-estimate on, is he going to be interested in bidding it next year?
I haven't spoken to him since. I would assume so. Yeah, it's nothing against him. Certainly, he probably picked up some other jobs in between the time we spoke, and he was just unable to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for action.
Mayor Kramer, I just wanted to add, I mean, I support what Mr. Schwartz is proposing. I mean, the council could decide to make the changes to the bid documents and re-advertise immediately, but based on our knowledge in this time of year, we just think it makes sense to wait till the first part of the year.
I think we learned that lesson from Highlands Harbor.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to reject the bids for the 2019 double chip seal Southwest Avenues project.
All right, motion has been made by Councilmember Harris and seconded by Councilmember Overton. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on, item 9, consideration of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Clearlake and the Middle Management Association for period July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2021. Mr. Flora.
So the city negotiating team has been meeting with the Middle Management Association for several months towards drafting a new memorandum of understanding. Both sides of the team have reached a tentative agreement that staff feels is both fiscally responsible and positions members of the association at a competitive advantage for salaries and benefits with other local agencies. A quick summary of some of the key deal points would be a 2% cost of living adjustment in the first year, a 3% cost of living adjustment in year 2. There's various changes to the salary ranges for consistency with the salary schedule. A number of individual ranges were adjusted previously, but not the whole schedule itself, which has created some problems, and this would clean that up. The Public Works Supervisor has never been officially added into a unit into the agreement, and so this agreement adds that classification in. And so just so the council and the public's aware, this is basically the sergeants in the police department, the records and communications supervisor, and the Public Works Supervisor are the classifications in this unit. There would be an addition of an educational loan program so that employees pursuing a bachelor's or other advanced degree would be able to have support to achieve that goal. There's a removal of the intermediate post-certificate incentive that had previously been in the agreement and would adjust the base salary up as that particular certificate is required to qualify for the job of sergeant. There's the addition of incentive for the sergeant assigned to the detective investigations division. Various cleanup of outdated MOU language. You were given a red line version. If you did look through that, you saw a number of sections that were effective in 2006 or 2012 that had never been adjusted over the years, and so we went through and cleaned those up. And so with those things, there's just a couple of other points that were noticed last night and the unit asked us to address. So one is on page 4, unused sick leave conversion. So you have the clean and what we're recommending is final version, and it should have been on the dais in front of you, but this was included a number of years ago. I'm not even sure how far back it went, but this allows employees to convert unused sick time upon retirement to service credit with CalPERS. And so, you know, just as a quick example, if you have 1 month of sick time that you never used in your career, you retire, you work for 20 years, CalPERS will give you, will base your retirement calculation on 20 years and 1 month of service time. So it's on page 4, it should be 1.3.
Look on your clean copy.
So the language that's in the current agreement said that we would work with CalPERS in our agreement with them to allow that benefit to them. Well, that was done many years ago, so we proposed deleting it. Some of the members wanted some language in the agreement that showed that they would still be getting that benefit even though it's in the CalPERS contract. And so we said, okay, that's fine. So this language here just reflects that our contract with CalPERS will allow unit members to convert unused sick time, sick leave to service credit upon retirement. And then one other minor thing, it's on page 16, section 14.1. It's talking about the advanced certificate incentive, 2.5% incentive pay, and there was a typo in that. It was listed, the title's listed as advanced certificate. The language below that showed it as an intermediate certificate, which are two different ones, of course, and so that intermediate just needs to be changed to advanced. And so those were a couple little cleanup things that we wanted you to be aware of. And so I think one of the members of the unit was supposed to be here tonight, but they must have had some public safety business to address. But as I understand, they're pleased with the agreement and are appreciative of the council for its offer.
Are there any questions of Mr. Flora? Seeing none, do you have a question for Mr. Flora? No, I do not. Are there any public comments? I see one coming up.
I was browsing through this MOU before coming here, and I love the addition of the loan program for education. I'd like to know a little bit more on, is there a potential incentive of if they stay a certain number of years that loan can be forgiven, or is that just a loan? What kind of percentage rate is coming with that loan? I'm kind of curious how that all works, but also I'm wondering, there's nothing that says to a relatable field based on your position that you're in, because then does that mean you can go for any bachelor's degree or any separate career choice that might lead you somewhere else? Because I would think that we want to make sure that it would to benefit the city and not the person themselves, and right now it seems wide open as it is. And not to say that somebody in management would take advantage of that situation, but leaving it wide open seemed too open. And another one is I couldn't see on the MOU, and I think it's something that's important as we have a changing demographic. Is there a bilingual incentive in the MOU? So that if you pass a Spanish test, that there's I forget what the percentage is, but it's a small percentage, like a 1 or 2%
Section
increase.
20.
Yeah, I
It is,
believe,
okay.
if I could address those, Mr. Mayor, as far as the bilingual,
Yes.
I think it's in all of our agreements. It's, I think, 2.5% for speaking and another 2.5% for writing. And then as far as the education program, so depending on how long they stayed with the organization, they may have to pay some of it back if they left early. But the courses study has to be approved in advance. And, also here it talks about regionally accredited because it's not just going to any online university and getting some degree that you want. I would have to approve the courses study.
I love the educational part. That's a good way to have succession plans within each department. So
I can read that for you if you'd like to. That's in section 9.2A. And, okay. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I bring it back to council. Are there any comments, questions?
Comment.
Vice Mayor Slotin.
I appreciate all the effort of your effort, Alan and Chief White, to make this MOU, make it all work and still be fiscally responsible in our duty for the city. And I think with this, we're a little bit ahead of the other agencies within the county, so that's where we want to be. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, we are. We feel like the guys are probably the hardest working ones out there in the county, and they're a very professional group. I'm very proud of them, and it's nice to be able to reward them for that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to adopt a memorandum of understanding between.
Could I comment first?
Sure.
I'd like to echo that sentiment is all. Chief White, you've done a great job with your staff, and I don't mind it. I think we are the cutting edge of law enforcement in Lake County and probably beyond. So, thank you again. Thanks your staff for us. Now you may, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to adopt a memorandum of understanding between the City of Clearlake and Middle Management Association and authorize the city manager to sign with the two corrections as noted by the city manager.
Second.
Well, so you have a motion by Councilman Harris and a second by pretty much all three of you, but we're going to let Mr. Purdock have the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, moving on again to item 10, discussion of the 2019 League of California Cities, LOCC, Annual Conference Resolutions. Mr. Flora.
Ms. Swanson will present the staff.
Swanson.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this year's League of California Cities Annual Conference is being held October 16th through 18th in Long Beach. During the annual conference, the attendees will hold a business meeting where proposed resolutions are voted on to determine the league's stance on certain issues in the coming year. The council has appointed Councilmember Overton as voting delegate and Mayor Kramer as alternate. There are two resolutions being proposed by the league for consideration at the business meeting. The first resolution asks for the league's support for expansion of the California Public Utilities Commission's Rule 20A eligibility criteria to include projects in very high fire hazard severity zones to facilitate more undergrounding of utilities in these high-risk zones, as well as the increase of funding allocations. The second asks for the league's support to ask the federal and state government to address impacts of international transboundary pollution flows into the southernmost regions of California and the Pacific Ocean. Support of the league's resolutions does not commit cities to adopting or implementing any league position in their local communities. So this time it's appropriate for the council to discuss their position on supporting or rejecting the proposed resolutions and by consensus give direction to Councilmember Overton and Mayor Kramer on how to vote at the business lunch.
Are there any questions for Ms. Swanson? Public, do you have any comments or questions? Come on. None? I'll bring it back to council.
I'd like to make a statement. I'd like to make a statement. I know some of this really doesn't pertain per se to us and our city, and if anybody has read this, but it does pertain to our state. And so I just want anybody that might get on the website and read this, that it's important for us to protect our waters because they affect us all. And so that's one of the things here that I really do believe we should support both of these myself.
Thank you. I would agree with that on the waters. I have had the non-pleasure of actually having to manage a property that was adjacent to the New River in Imperial County, and it's god-awful, and it's coming right out of Mexico. As well as the other one, I think we do have some local contact on that. We're in part of the very high fire area. Our city actually has some.
Yes, the city is in the very high fire hazard severity. So, this proposed resolution would ask for the CPUC to allocate more funding for undergrounding and projects. It doesn't guarantee it, of course, it's just asking the league to support.
Right, yeah, in fact, it's several million.
Mr. Mayor, maybe I could address that.
Yes.
So the current Rule 20A program is really just for beautification, undergrounding of utilities, but it's just focused on beautification. So if you have some areas that we know are a high fire hazard area of the community, we really want to underground those. We couldn't use that funding for that. And so there's funding allocated to each jurisdiction within PG&E's service area. And I meant to bring the printout. Mr. Schwartz and myself just recently met with our Rule 20A representative of PG&E, and I believe we have around 3.4 million available to us currently, but that can only be used on projects where you want to beautify sort of a main corridor or something like that. So there's a number of efforts because communities are struggling to use these funds, and she shared with us that there's some talk about being able to increase it and use it for different things. But if this was to pass, the funding that we currently have access to would be able to be used for more than just beautification if we wanted to address a high fire hazard area.
I think the avenues, if I remember correctly, were on that map as being very high.
Yeah, I believe it is consistent with the map behind you. This is actually the map related to PG&E. This is a PUC map for tiers of fire threat, so it's a little bit different than that one, but I think it's pretty consistent with the yellow that you see there.
Yes.
So it wouldn't cover maybe the whole city, but those areas on the outskirts more would be eligible.
I think it is something that we should support. Let me go down. Vice Mayor Slotin, you came up with something apparently.
Yeah, I'd like to see not facilitate more undergrounding, but facilitate all undergrounding.
I agree.
Stronger language I would prefer, but if that becomes a topic of the discussion there, I would like to see that.
Well, Council Member Overton will take those thoughts. And I guess I will if she's not, but you are going to be there. So.
As far as
At any rate, are there any other comments? I'll entertain the motion.
With this direction.
Or recommended action.
Basically, the direction is you want me to vote yes on both of these, correct?
There you go. Is that the direction of everybody? Okay. That's the direction. Item 11. Consideration of adding an office assistant 2 and a limited term code enforcement officer 1/2 to the position allocations for fiscal year 2019-2020, resolution number 2019-38. Chief White.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. So the police department's obviously been busy with doing a bunch of different things, but our efforts, while we are seeing success in the community, we're not having such good success within our lobby. We're seeing a significant increase in lobby traffic, and our current model of staffing, which essentially is we share the office assistant that works, or the code enforcement technician that works in code enforcement, who happens to be right there, Jan. is our front lobby superhero because she literally gets up and down every few minutes going back and forth between her desk where she has stuff to do and trying to address people in the front lobby. Based upon our looking at the issue, it seems to be primarily due to an increase in enforcement activity, primarily in code enforcement, animal control, and citation issuance. We believe that that traffic will continue to increase as we modernize our ordinances and continue to clean up the city. Examples of ordinances include commercial property ordinance, abandoned vehicle ordinance, and planned updates to the rental property ordinance. So with that, what we're requesting is that the council would authorize us to hire an office assistant too. Their primary duty would be to handle the lobby traffic. In times when they're not assisting the customers at the front window, they'd perform other clerical work such as data entry, handling phone calls, et cetera. This would also allow us to look at reopening our lobby for 5 days per week. Currently, it's open only 4 days, matching the city hall schedule. But with everything going on within the police department, it's important that we have it open. I would also mention that with our new 911 PSAP, unfortunately, our current method of allowing people into the lobby on Friday is the dispatcher has to leave the console and actually go out there and open up the door, which is, aside from being an obvious safety hazard, takes them away from being at the console and being able to respond. So that's the office assistant 2 position. The code enforcement officer limited term position. Obviously, we continue to increase our efforts within enforcement, in code enforcement, primarily in the areas of blight and hazardous vegetation. They've also been taking on new workloads relating to an enactment of new ordinances, as well as renewed enforcement for existing ordinances. While they're handling a record number of cases, which you received an update at a prior meeting, there's many more cases that could be open, and if resolved, would help improve the city. We also have a return of abandoned vehicle abatement authority funding, and there's an opportunity that we can make a significant push towards removing the abandoned, wrecked, and dismantled cars that are littered across the city. There also happens to be additional CDBG money that we have that must be expended in order to be eligible for additional funding through CDBG. Most recently, what we've been doing is we moved a employee into a part-time extra help code enforcement officer position on a trial basis. To leverage some of this CDBG funding. However, without council action, that's limited to 960 hours and is non-benefited. Right now, they're being trained. They've been helping Jan out with the backlog of some clerical work. In the next few weeks, they'll be learning field work, which includes a concentrated effort on the abandoned vehicles. So what we're asking is that the council would authorize upgrading this position to a limited term full-time position. It would be limited to the current fiscal year and require approval of the city manager based upon the effectiveness of the current part-time extra help position. So in other words, if you authorize it tonight, we wouldn't anticipate actually making the change until we see how this trial program works out over the next few months. But at such time that it appears that it's effective, then the city manager would be able to act without having to come back. The reason why we're asking it as a limited term is just due to the uncertainty. This is all grant-related funding, and it's important that we bear that in mind as we add on a position that is dependent upon that grant funding, and that it's also clear to any applicants that they understand that it is limited term. I would mention that in both of these cases, if you look at historical turnover of the city, although we should all be concerned when we go to add positions, that based upon that turnover, there tends to be an opportunity to reevaluate every time turnover happens to see if the funding is what we projected, et cetera. Our current, looking at revenues within the areas that I mentioned that are increasing activity within the lobby and so forth, we are seeing significantly increased revenues in those areas. So that would offset some of the impact. Obviously, within the area of code enforcement, our ultimate hope is that we go to resolve issues, we get new economic development, and then that replaces what currently is coming in through fines and corrective actions. Just to give you a sense of their efforts and what kind of drives the lobby traffic, I pulled some numbers since May. So since May, they've issued out over 1,300 administrative citations, averaging 329 citations a month. They created over 950 new cases, so you're talking about 237 cases a month that are going new. In the area of the parking, registration, mechanical, about 114 a month. The other area which is really big is animal licensing. We really didn't have an effective program to enforce that, and that's one of the ways that we create revenue to offset the tremendous expense of running an animal care and control operation. Since May, with the renewed efforts, we've processed 522 dog licenses, so 130 per month. So you can imagine, if any of you have been by, you've seen our lines. It looks like a ride for Disneyland, but it goes out into the lobby. So we'd really like to switch from somebody going up, pressing buttons on the door for the office assistant position, and then for the code enforcement one, while funding's available, to continue to apply kind of a surge towards addressing some of the issues. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Overton, you have a question.
Oh, yeah, I have some, questions or suggestions. I'm not sure which one it is. So with the code enforcement, I've had the problem, and other people have had the problems with being able to get anybody on the phone to get a return phone call. In fact, me personally, never got a return phone call, and I'm a council member. So I look at it, if I didn't get it, it's unlikely that when these people come up here and tell us that they're probably telling the truth. So is this person going to be answering these calls? Somebody needs to start answering these calls, so.
Sure. So actually, after you brought up the incident that you experienced, I'll tell you just, first of all, globally, our phone system is terrible in the city. We're in the midst of replacing it right now. But just as recently as yesterday, I was going through the list and found out you call certain numbers and it rings different people and so forth. But in the event, one change that we did do is that we've now routed so all the calls go to Jan, and then she disperses and tracks them. However, she's not able to talk to people and answer the phone when she's at the front window, so we have to do that. So yes, this would help that, because she would be more available to not only answer those calls, but to try to triage them and give people information instead of kind of running back and forth.
Okay, all right, well, then I'm all for it. So, because we really need to do something with the code enforcement situation there, and try to get more help in there to get it, things taken care of, so. And we don't want you running and opening up the door all the time either. So.
Councilmember Harris.
I'm just wondering if there would be any benefit to the addition of a digital kiosk in which people can come to and handle paying the fines and that sort of thing without actually having to gain the assistance of another human. And also if there would be a porthole on our website for the allowance of the same thing, so that somebody wouldn't necessarily have to have direct correspondence with another human to accomplish the task that they have.
So on that front, we are actually in the process of putting a kiosk in the lobby for filing reports, being able to go on if they don't have a computer, pay fines, et cetera, without interacting with somebody. We currently do offer citation payment online, so they can do that. But one of the things that we found in my experience from a city that I came from and here is that a lot of people in the community that we serve aren't necessarily digitally connected, and so they prefer to talk to somebody. And a lot of people just simply don't understand, we'll give them the forms that has all the information, but we have to literally sit there and read it to them and try to explain it, and that's what's taking up a lot of Jan's time. If we had somebody at the front window, they could explain it. And what we found is that with some of the individuals, once we explain it, we can actually get compliance with it. But we're definitely looking at ways to try to automate it, and so that will be in there soon. We have it all spec'd out for what will go in the lobby.
Is there a possibility that a kiosk like that could actually have an audible scenario which actually reads the information directly to the person that's using the kiosk?
We hadn't thought about that. It's something that we could look at. I'm not sure that in what we're looking at is kind of a low-cost, quick action option. I think in the case, to clarify about the reading, isn't so much of not being able to read it, it's understanding like what it means. So we'll issue somebody,
to
say
bring
we've given them notices.
comprehension.
Yeah, it's kind of comprehending it and just understanding, where the processes are at and what it means when it says, if you don't comply, you get a citation. Then now they have a citation. They go, well, I decided to fix it, so doesn't this all go away? So we have to explain to them kind of the process.
I was thinking with your tech-savvy background, this has already been a bridge that was crossed, but I just wanted to check because it just struck me.
Good question.
Just a quick question.
Vice Mayor Slotin.
Is this office assistants be able to, one that speaks Spanish? Because I've noticed that, I don't know if Jan speaks or not, but.
So it wouldn't be in any way restricted to that. Obviously, if we get somebody that has that skill, then that's compensated in through the MOUs and so forth. But we do have abilities. We have people on staff that do speak Spanish, and we will bring them up. Or, if we need other languages, we have the language line that they could do. So we definitely have some options.
Okay. Thank you.
Take it out to the public. Do we have any public comment or questions? Okay, no comments from the public. We'll bring it back to council for action.
I'd like to, if you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir.
I agree with what you said.
Okay. I'd like to make the motion to accept resolution number 2019-38, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake approving the addition of an Officer Assistant 2 and a limited term Code Enforcement Officer 1-2 to the fiscal year 19-20 budget.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilmember Overton and a second by Councilmember Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. That takes us to city manager and council member reports. Mr. Flora.
So, our housing element was approved by HCD, as well as the Planning Commission recently, and so we'll plan to bring that to the council for adoption in October. And so it took kind of a lot of work and a lot of prioritization on that task to get it completed within HCD's timeline. But just to give you an example, not to compare within the county, of course, but the county jurisdiction is on the very bad list of jurisdictions. It's a very short list with the across the state as far as their housing element adoption. City of Lakeport also isn't meeting the timeline, so that means that they're going to have to adopt a housing element every 4 years, where now we'll be on an 8-year cycle. So it is a big accomplishment and is going to save us a lot of staff time and resources over the long term. So very pleased with Mr. Price's work and our staff here to get that completed. Our hazard mitigation plan was also recently approved by Cal OES and ultimately FEMA, so we'll also be bringing that forward to the council soon, which is another big task that we're pleased went through smoothly. We did unfortunately get notice that we will not be receiving CDBG funding for the Highlands Park project. And so there's some other funding sources coming up in the next several months that we'll be doing what we can to identify another funding source for that project. State of the City, October 2nd, 5 p.m. We're excited about the plans that we have this year. So we sent out a number of invitations. Hopefully you all got them, as well as another long list of other dignitaries throughout the county. So we're hoping that we have a big crowd. The Austin Park project is finally out to bid. Went out last week. Bids will be due on September 30th. It was very difficult to make this happen. Very thankful to Mr. Schwartz and other staff for putting in a lot of extra time to shepherd this across the finish line. So now we're just nervous about how the bids are going to come in, of course, but looking forward to seeing where they are and moving forward on that project later this year. Some of you are involved in the Tourism Improvement District's marketing plan and bringing Cubic in to develop a brand for Lake County as a tourism destination. The tentative plan at this point for sort of public unveiling of that new brand will be October 9th. So many of you will be getting invitations if you were involved in the process up to this point. But we, let's see, I think we're planning on having it at the Soper Reese, so there's room for a lot of folks to come in and participate in that event. It's going to be, as the board, we haven't actually seen all of it yet. We'll be seeing it, I think, on Monday or Tuesday of next week, but it's very exciting. I think it's going to be really put us in a position that we've never been in as a tourism destination. We've been having a lot of discussions internally about tax sales and the county supporting the issue that we have here in our community and I think across the county. Supervisor Sabatier has been very supportive of that and pushing hard at the county level to make sure that we have a tax sale soon. I believe there's going to be an item before the Board of Supervisors next week on Tuesday. I'm planning to go and lobby the board to encourage them to do anything they can to make sure that we have a sale and the county participates in getting the well over 1,000 lots within our community that are currently in tax default up for sale and available for development. Chief mentioned that we're in the process of installing a new phone system within City Hall. There's been a lot of problems with it. It's very archaic, but I wanted to point this out because this is another example of one of the benefits of having Chief White here that most of you don't really see on a daily basis. But a very rough, off-the-top estimate, I would expect that with the technology that's been implemented in the last year since he's been here, he's very creative in figuring out low-cost but effective solutions to things that he's probably saved the city a couple $100,000 already. And a phone system that in most places would probably cost us $100,000. He found a solution that we can do it between $10,000 and $11,000, and I'm just extremely grateful to him as a resource, and I want the council to be aware of that. The animal shelter grant application has been submitted to USDA. There's a couple of council bios that are still pending to consider a complete application, so those of you on the council know who you are, and hopefully those can be submitted soon.
Yes. Yes, sir.
We're also doing some work, and we received nearly $70,000 from the state, courtesy of our assemblywoman, for use at the community center. So we're looking at some plans to use that, and I would also like to try to leverage that funding with an additional USDA grant application. And so we're working on putting the package together with Mr. Schwartz and his team. And so I think, a good project on that. Just wanted the council to be aware. We'll be bringing that forward hopefully soon. And then hopefully all of you have checked in with Melissa if you're going to the League of Cities conference, because she's trying to make final arrangements for that. So if you haven't double-checked everything with her, please do. And then I did want to turn it over to Chief White to give a couple of updates on some other upgrades in the department.
Keep up on the screen real quick. So as I'm sure you guys all heard, the 911 system, we're now live with that. Our first 911 call came from the area of Grocery Outlet. That's our historical piece. We are still working on with all the cellular carriers to steer the cell phone, so your cell phone still will ring to Lake County. They had to add some more lines between Ukiah and Lake County, so that's all kind of underway. The other project that kicked off was our radio project. Unfortunately, no good deed goes unpunished. We mentioned the last time about the tower needing to be replaced soon, but we were hopeful that we could extend a little life out of it. We got some bad news, what was it, I guess last week. The climber went to go up it and deemed that it was unsafe to climb, that it's actually split to the core. So luckily we have some people with good ingenuity inside the department, and you'll see up there, it's kind of hard to see, but that's actually Sergeant Snyder on the side of the building. So literally within an hour of identifying this problem, we figured there's an old satellite dish that was mounted to the building that about 20 years ago, that's how you would get the electronic training for the police officers through post, and then the internet came around and took care of that. So we actually cut the thing off. We went to go to mount the stuff and then realized half of it was ripped out of the building. Okay. So Sergeant Snyder, within a couple hours, was able to re-anchor, re-secure the whole thing to the building. So you'll notice there's now new antenna apparatus on there to at least keep the project going. But we do expect to come back with the tower project sooner than what we expected. So we're working with the telecommunications engineer to try to figure out options for that. But that project is well underway. So we're excited, and the staff are definitely appreciative.
Thank you, Chief White.
That's my report.
That's your report. Councilmember Purdock.
Well, sir, as you know, we attended the Lake County Area Transit meeting yesterday. I was grateful that we were able to keep the routes open and the buses running. So kudos to them, and I appreciate their help and support. I suppose that concludes my report, other than just to mention the Veterans Stand Down next week, hoping to meet and help those veterans in Lake County who need help and support. That'll be on Wednesday and Thursday at the Lake County Fairgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Purduck. Councilmember Harris.
I have nothing of significant importance to contribute. Thank you.
Councilmember Overton.
I find that hard to believe.
I bicker.
He just got one over his head. I have been working on, with the meeting that we did, it's either going to be a COAB or a VOAB. I think we've all decided a COAB is where everybody comes together and meets and works on evacuations and fires and everything. So I been meeting with a few of the people trying to get policies, procedures, and boards, kind of seeing how we're going to be doing things. I'm kind of excited to be involved in that because that's a whole county-wide thing, and hopefully we'll be prepared with a larger group if we have what we had like the Valley Fire. So we're working on getting that. I have met with Supervisor Sabatier today, and I've met with the mayor and talked about some things, and also Alan on the community center. So, and then just want a reminder that the senior center is having their annual event, and I hope that everybody comes out and helps supports the seniors of our community by joining us for a really fun time. Just come as you are. So, and that's it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Slidden.
I have nothing to report.
Yeah. Well, as Councilmember Purduck said, I attended the Lake Transit Board of Directors Mobility, Board LTA meeting the other day, and I guess that our fellow member, Mr. Leonard, did decide to go to the party tonight. One of the folks is retiring, so he apparently went there. Last week, I also was in the Lake Links board meeting, monthly board meeting held here actually, and our big thing is Mr. Carl Parker is officially an employee of Lake Links as our mobility manager of Lake Links. And talking about a lot of exciting programs. Lake Links' office is opening in Suite C of 14420 Lakeshore Drive across from Griffin's Furniture. That'll hopefully will be in place by October 1st, and at the same time we'll be also adding an assistant to be helping Mr. Parker. We're trying to develop many new programs. I know one of our board members met with Councilwoman Overton in her capacity as the Senior Center Manager, and hopefully talked about some things that you might be able to do together. So that's my report. Future agenda items, Mr. Flora.
No, I don't think he needs to. I need to. I would like to add something.
Nothing to add
You wanna,
unless you
oh,
do.
I'm sorry, we have a little do-over here, or add on?
Well, I just want to add on to the agenda, is what I want to. Sure. So I'd like to put sometime in the future, closely future, about the private road situations that we have here. I'd like to start looking at what we're going to be doing there with them, some of them just not passable even for emergency vehicles. So I'd like to start like either, talking about that and seeing what we're going to be able to do with those.
Okay, we can do that. So it's a little different situation, but since you brought it up, we have had some community members that have met with me and are requesting that the city take over maintenance of their street. It's certainly a passable street, but we're doing some background research on, what the deal is there, and we'll bring that to council in the fairly near future, I believe, so we can.
I would concur with Councilwoman Overton that it is something that we need to look at and see whether we can add that, because they are paying taxes in the city, and
We've got to start the conversation.
yes, if we can do it. So, anything else? Any other agenda items? Seeing none, we will now adjourn to closed session at 7:25.